Welcome everyone. Welcome to Staying Healthy at Home Gardening. I am Jenny Starr, the Health and Wellness Specialist for the Kansas City Public Library. And I'm joined today as always by Monica Miller she's my Health and Wellness intern and also works with the MU Extension.
Yep.
And then Amy Morris, who is at Reese Library, which is reopening. Exciting news. The library reopens on June 1st. Right after the holiday weekend, so that people can come in and browse books again and use the computers and all the good stuff. Just a reminder, we still have a mask mandate at the library, so we are still requiring people to wear face coverings inside. But I am going to show you a couple of things today before Monica takes over. Last week we talked about dill. And I talked a little bit about A to Z foods. So I want to show you that resource that we have at the library. So I share my screen and I meant to start even earlier than this. Let me get back to the main page of the library. So can you all see this from my screen?
Yes.
Okay. It looks so different when you start sharing your screen. So the way you find this database is just from our Kansas City Public Library website. If you go over here to resources and research, the fastest way to get to A to Z foods is to just go to A. So we'll click A. And then if you scroll down, I'm going to kind of go slow so you don't get motion sickness from it. There are several A to Z databases, but A to Z World Food is the one that I was referring to, and you just click that. And then normally when you hit access A to Z World Food, what we'll do is ask for you to put in your library card and your PIN number, but since I'm already signed in, it's not asking for that. And so if you have a library card for the Kansas City Public Library, you can access this from home, and then you can also access it in the library buildings. And this is really fun to play around with, and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but I wanted to show you that you can search by ingredient. So right up here, there's this ingredient label that you can click on in the menu. And this database has recipes from all over the world. And it talks also about culture and just different things about that country. So it's really fun to play around with. But for the purposes of today and our dill project that we're working on, we'll just click ingredients. And then if you go, it has the picture menu here, and then there's also the menu on the side. But I'm going to click herbs because that's what we're using. And then I really love that it shows pictures of everything. So I don't know if you've ever gotten a recipe with an herb you haven't used before, and you get to the store and you're not really sure what you're looking for. So this is nice because it has photos of everything. But dill is right here, our friend dill.
Our best friend.
Our best friend. And so it gives you a description of it. And this is even fun for if you're just thinking about what herbs you might want to plant in your garden. You can look at the different ones and find out things about them. So this tells you that it's, it's native to the Mediterranean, which is why you find it in a lot of Mediterranean cooking. And it tells you just information about what it's used for. But if you scroll down, even it has a dill growing section, which I don't think I noticed before.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's exciting. Then if you go down to the bottom, you'll see featured recipes with dill. And so you can just see it has several recipes using dill. There's quite a few. So you can just kind of scroll through there. And there are a lot actually. And then I believe you could also do the same thing just by typing in the search. If we typed in dill, it will give you all the recipes that have dill in them. So that's a pretty fun way to look for new recipes, not just for your dill, but for anything that you are growing or anything that you're just interested in trying. You can also, when you're using this database, you can go and look at it by country. You can look at it lots of different ways. But for the purpose of this, I wanted to show you how you can learn to utilize dill a little bit more. I think sometimes we just think of it as like pickles and dressings, and Monica, you shared a couple of other things last time, but I just wanted everyone to see there are a lot of recipes. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and then I'm going to toss
This
it over to you, Monica.
website, like if you decide to visit that website, set yourself a little me time for when you go visit it, because it is like, it's like the Wikipedia of world food recipes, and you'll just go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. It's a
It's
really,
really
really fun
fun.
site.
It's really fun.
I pulled it up in another window while you're talking to us about it, and I'm totally gonna look at it when we're done.
Yes, it's so fun. And I really like looking at different countries, and it'll talk about not just the recipes, but it'll talk about the culture around food.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I did a foreign exchange for a summer in Greece. And so I went and looked up, and it really did talk about like the times people eat, and what kind of meals are served at each time of the day. And it talks about the coffee and the tea culture, and it talks about like beers and liquors that are from that country. And so it's just kind of interesting to learn more about the culture as well.
I think that you had shared this with me like maybe right before quarantine. And I was like, oh, I'm going to plan like themed dinner parties around this, which obviously I was not able to do. So I'm hoping this summer that I might be able to get back to that.
The future goal. Yes.
Yeah, do some fun outside stuff. But it's the coolest website. I'm obsessed with it. Okay, so now I will share my screen. Goodbye, Jenny Star's screen. Today we're going to talk about gardening on a budget. No, thank you. I don't know what that said. Hopefully it wasn't telling me that my computer's been hacked. I didn't actually read it. So gardening, if you're anything like me, you think that something sounds awesome and you decide to really go all in. And that can get expensive with gardening. So especially if you're new to gardening, you're trying out some stuff for the first time, these are just some kind of like, well, first of all, like we're going to go over like, what do you really need to garden? Like really, truly, what do you need if you just want to grow some veggies in your backyard? And then we're going to talk about just like, what are some tricks and techniques and approaches that you can take to, make it a little bit less expensive, and also so that you can, repurpose some existing things that you may have also, which is pretty cool. All about the, reusing materials. Borrow stuff is like my first favorite tip. Tools and other equipment can be super expensive, especially stuff, that you're not going to use very often, like a tiller, even like wheelbarrow, stuff like that. Ask around, ask your neighbors, ask your parents in my case, and just see who's got stuff that you can borrow just for a day or two so that you don't have to go out and, buy your own $95 wheel. I don't know how much wheelbarrows cost, but I assume they're expensive. Your own wheelbarrow, you can just borrow one for a couple days. You can also rent equipment. That can be a really practical solution. I think Home Depot, you can rent stuff like tillers, but if you're in Kansas City, you can rent them at Kansas City Community Garden, and it is not very expensive. I think it's like $20 and you get it for a 4-hour period. And they did share a trick with me that if you rent it for a Friday afternoon, then you keep it all weekend because they won't be open for you to bring it back. Don't tell them that I told you. You do, to get over there, you need to have like a minivan or a truck because it's a gas powered one, so you can't lay it down or it will spill gas everywhere. You guys know I'm always talking about like my dorky plant and vegetable groups and stuff that I belong to on Facebook, but I've learned so much. I think this is like one of the most like beautiful, pure parts of the internet and social media is like people who are really into plants and growing their own foods. And I've found a really, really supportive community through some different Facebook groups. There's also, the Kansas City Plant and Seed Swap, and they host, I think they had theirs this year already. They might have a fall one as well, but it's exactly what it sounds like. You bring some seeds, you bring plants, I think you can bring garden tools, and it's kind of an honor system. So however many items you bring to swap, you go around and you're able to pick that many of items to take home with you. It's really cool. There's another annual just seed swap that's hosted at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Center, and kind of the same concept. The Ruiz Library, we are always bragging about. They have that super cool seed library that Amy was telling us about the other week, and that's where we were hanging out last week when we did the dill. Any kind of like KC farming, garden, buy, sell, trade groups, there's a couple of them, but this is a great one if you're looking for like a specific tool or piece of equipment. A lot of people are selling or giving away, or you can even find somebody to borrow from on these groups. And then Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace can be a really good place to get good deals on stuff, especially this year, since a lot of people were kind of gung-ho about gardening during quarantine. I'm seeing a lot more things pop up on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. Be sure to use, best practices for safe buying and selling if you kind of decide to go this route. In Kansas City, the KCPD actually has a couple of spots that have been set up purely for the purpose of people meeting up with folks that they have bought items from online. So they're like monitored, and you can do that securely there. So I'm sure most other cities probably have something similar to that. So just keep that in mind. Some other good places to find a bargain, Habitat for Humanity Restore. We've got several of these in Kansas City. I think there's at least 3 or 4 of them. This is just like a fun place to go in the first place. So basically like a lot of like construction firms or like tile manufacturers, just like anything that you can kind of relate to like building and maintaining homes, yards, stuff like that. They'll donate it to the Habitat for Humanity Restore. So the proceeds are going to go to support Habitat for Humanity's efforts. And then you can also just find like the coolest stuff there. Sometimes they get some really neat like architectural salvage and just everything. I swear, don't ever go buy a door at Home Depot. They always have a million doors there. And I'm like, what can I do with this cool door? Rummage and garage sales. It's that time of year. A lot of churches and like bigger organizations tend to have rummage and garage sales, and they are priced to move. I've gotten a lot of good stuff at some church rummage sales. Cargo Largo, if you don't know the good word of Cargo Largo, I'm here to deliver it to you. This is out in Independence, maybe like another 5 minutes or so past the stadiums, headed east. And they basically what they do is they buy unclaimed freight from the US Postal Service that has anything that is unclaimed that gets like lost in the mail or whatever. There's 30 days that you can claim it, and then after that it goes up to auction. And Cargo Largo like buys out this whole auction usually, and then they have a giant warehouse where they sell everything there. And I found some really cool, just like anything you can think of, but specifically I found some really cool like gardening supplies. Kansas City Community Gardens. I'm not going to go into this too detailed because I talk about it literally all the time, but membership on a sliding scale of income, even if you're in the highest income bracket, your membership is $25. And that also gets you 10 packets of free seeds, 10 pounds of chicken poop fertilizer, and then you get access to their seedlings, which are just like a crazy good deal compared to other places like Home Depot where you might get them.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
They also sell things like tomato cages that are really affordable, like nice, the ones that you get that are kind of flimsy that you stick in the ground. Those are good for some plants, but they're not great for tomatoes actually, because tomatoes like to grow bigger than that. So they sell for like $5, really sturdy, nice ones. Mm-hmm. And then they also sell straw at different times of year. So
yes, that's a great place to get straw. Yeah. It's like $6 or $7 for a whole bale of it.
Yeah. So it's just a good overall garden supply. I always check there first to see if they have it before I buy something.
Yes. And they do a lot of really awesome things for the community. as well. I personally have gotten some tremendous help from them and some of the community food pantry gardens that I help run in the city. So they're just like amazing. Global One Urban Farming. This is actually an organization that a friend of mine, her name is Star Royce, her and her husband, they run this organization, and they have a lot of really good resources to help people who are living in the city who maybe don't have access to, getting to Kansas City Community Gardens, getting a lot of these resources. She will actually kind of like do consultations at people's homes and then help them find the resources that they need in order to get a garden going in their yard. So she does super cool work too. And her own farm, everything she grows, she gives away to the public and to people in need. She's an amazing human being also. Farmers markets, especially this time of year, you can find like tomato plant starters, you can find seeds, and they're usually a really, again, like, maybe $1 a plant compared to you go to the hardware store and they're $3-4 a plant. Missouri Organics Recycling. This is a really good place where you can get compost, and also like topsoil, which you don't want to use for gardening, but for other parts of your yard. You can get mulch there for really inexpensive. So another place that's is worth checking out. DIY or use found objects. You can make just about anything into a garden if it is watertight and you put your mind to it. Use materials that you have on hand to create supports and planters. You just want to make sure that they're food safe. So if you have like some barrel that used to have like, acid in it, not that any of us have that laying around, you might not want to cut that open and make it into a garden bed. Consider growing in straw bales, grow bags, or even directly in bags of soil. It's not like the cutest thing, but if it's in your backyard or whatever, nobody's going to see it. And also, who cares anyways? So you can just like buy a bag of that gardening soil, like vegetable garden soil, cut it open and stick a couple of plants directly in there and they'll grow. It's pretty cool. Making your own trellises. I got pretty into that last year, so I'll show you my DIY trellis. So here's some cool, just some cool pictures of some creative ways that people have set up their garden or growing space or support structures. This one at the very top, this is my community garden that I participate in. And these are actually like roofing tiles that she made a raised bed out of it. And that's just gonna get filled with gardening soil. So we'll go clockwise. This is a tomato, it looks like maybe a couple tomato plants. It's just one of those big like 35-gallon Rubbermaid tubs. I think that's pretty cool. And down here on the bottom, that's what I was talking about. They just kind of like split that bag of soil open and put their tomatoes right in, which is pretty clever. That doesn't look too bad. That's kind of like a cute bag also. Left, this is another one from my specific community garden. She's got like an old headboard that they're using for a trellis structure, which is really cute and also very functional. So this is my little DIY trellis that I did last year. All this stuff is from Amazon, and I think I have links to it on another page. We'll confirm that here in just a second. So about $6. Here's a bigger version of it. All you need are the bamboo stakes, cotton twine, and the knowledge of how to execute a mean lashing knot, which for me was probably the hardest part. But now I can make a raft or a trellis whenever I want. So I'm glad that I have that knowledge. This I think is really cool, and I kind of want to do this next year, maybe if I have a little more time than I did this spring, but straw bale gardening, it's a really inexpensive alternative to traditional raised beds. We were just saying you can go to Kansas City Community Gardens and you can get straw bales for $7 a bale. It's really easy to position for ideal growing conditions. So if you want to move something over into the sun, it's literally just picking up a bale of straw and moving it over into the sun. It creates its own compost, which is pretty spiffy, and it generates heat while it's making that compost, which is great when you're starting out those seedlings and little baby vegetables at the beginning of the growing season. You're also not going to have to do very much weeding with them, which big win right there. I don't think anyone actually likes weeding. Okay, I got to stop my share for a second so you can actually hear what's going on. I always forget to do that. Oh, sorry. Yay. Very dramatic music.
Are you tired of fighting with poor garden soil? Or perhaps you live in a temporary situation where you don't want to invest in building a raised bed? Well, we may have the solution for you if that's the case, and this is called straw bale gardening. Basically, it's planting in straw bales. Typically, straw bales are preferred over hay bales because they have less weed seeds. Now, they still may have some weed seeds, but they have fewer weed seeds in them. You can see here we have 8 straw bales, and you want to place them up on end so the twine is actually going around the bale, and what traditionally would be the long side of the straw bale is actually going to be our top side. So this is so we can have plenty of space to plant in. You want to make sure to keep them twined up or whether it's wire or twine, keep them attached because that's what's going to hold that bale together. Now, if you have new bells, there's a process that we need to do called conditioning these bells, and that's going to take about 14 days. If you're planting this with a warm season crop in mid-April, you're going to want to start this process towards the end of March or the beginning of April so that you're ready to plant as soon as possible. When we condition these straw bells, what we're doing is we're starting a process of decomposition. You can see straw bells are made of a lot of straw and carbon material, and basically if we don't condition them prior to planting, any fertilizer or nutrients that we add to this, the microbes are going to tie it up immediately and not make it available for our plants. So by starting the conditioning process, that's going to start that decomposition and allow there to be some nutrients available for our plants when we plant them. So how do we do that? Again, the conditioning process takes about 14 days, and what you're going to do is every other day for 14 days, you're going to spread some urea or high nitrogen fertilizer across the top of the bales of straw. While you're applying the high nitrogen fertilizer every other day for 14 days, you want to make sure to water your straw bales every day for 14 days. Now that we've got our bales nice and soaked, and you do want to soak them thoroughly because you want to help get that nitrogen fertilizer down into that bale of hay or straw. Because what you're doing is you're creating an exothermic reaction of decomposition. So we're going to start breaking down that organic straw material with that nitrogen fertilizer. Now in this process, the straw bales are going to heat up over those 14 days. And so you can monitor when it peaks at heat. You can use soil probes such as what we have here. You can also kind of divide it and push your hand down in there and actually feel a warmer temperature down in the straw bale. It will peak in the 14 days, and then usually around the 14th day it'll start cooling off. And at this point you know that reaction has taken place. Your straw bale is starting to decompose, and so any additional fertilizer that you apply on your straw bale won't necessarily be completely tied up by those microbes. So at this point, then we could start planting. So for now, we've got our straw bales started, and we'll come back and water them every day for 14 days, and we'll fertilize them every other day for 14 days. For more information on how to start a straw bale garden or what you can plant in one, check out this fact sheet.
We hope you enjoyed this video.
We did. Thank you, Oklahoma Extension. So I think that's super neat, and I swear someday I'm gonna try it. Does anybody have any questions that they want to shout out to the group right now? We've got, gosh, it's 3:28 already.
Yeah, I got a quick question. Thanks.
Yes.
You said topsoil is not good for planting, and I was just curious why. Is it missing certain things?
It's gonna have a lot of like probably weeds and just like random seeds in it. It also like nothing about the texture is consistent. Like you could find like big old hunks of rocks in it and stuff. And it's a lot of times it can be pretty depleted of nutrients as well. So it's just not gonna do much for you. So even though it is a little bit less expensive, it's like all the work that you would have to put into like amending it and preparing it to actually grow your vegetables in would completely negate all of that savings. Plus it would be a huge pain in the butt. So we really, I mean, it doesn't mean that nothing is going to grow in it, but it probably won't. And it's just going to be a lot of effort for getting it ready to grow, or a big disappointment.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about deer poop or horse poop for fertilizer?
I'm not positive, but I know any sort of like manure that comes from a carnivorous or omnivorous source is for sure a bad idea. So any sort of like animal poo fertilizer that we would utilize in our gardens is going to be from like a vegetarian animal. So I don't know, are those things vegetarians? Would you say a deer?
Horses are for sure. I think deer are also. And my very first community garden I planted in, we did have horse manure donated to us, and we used it and it worked well.
I know that Kansas City Zoo does a sale of elephant poo manure every year.
Oh, okay.
So talk about a conversation starter when you're giving tours of your garden.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like with deer, like where are you gonna get deer poop?
Well, I have it because they're eating up the whole garden.
And I have no idea what like the sterilization process of that involves either. Because even though it's not human feces, or it's like from the I can think of herbivore. If it's from an herbivore animal, like it still is going to contain potentially harmful bacteria, and also it can be, you know, like it could be hosting parasites from those animals as well. Mm-hmm. So my rule of thumb is generally to leave the manure to the professionals.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because you do run the risk of, you know, because there are zoonotic diseases that can pass between animals and humans as well. So you just want to be really careful around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, particularly now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions before we end for the day?
You guys are in weekend mode already, aren't you?
Can you put that slide back up where it had like cost saving places to check out?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. This was really great.
Thanks. Seriously though, guys, if you've never been to Cargo Largo and you live in Kansas City, you're missing out. It's going to change your life. It's so fun. Doop-a-doo-doo. Amy, have you ever been to Cargo Largo?
No, I know nothing about it.
Oh, it's magical.
It's a pretty fun place.
Again, what kind of stuff can you get there?
Everything that might possibly be shipped somewhere. I've bought like just the craziest stuff. They're like there's like pantry goods there. like canned goods, spices, grains, there's furniture, there's clothes, there's shoes, there's electronics, there's home goods. Yeah,
They have
just
like
like
health and beauty, school supplies.
they
Yeah,
have like
just a little of everything, really.
books. I've gotten some really good cookbooks for like half off there before.
Nice.
I've
Thank you
also
for
gotten
that.
like a pair of Kate Spade flats there before.
Excellent. Hey, can you give me also that other slide where it talked about like seed swap?
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But yeah, there's a lot of nerds out there who are willing to share their resources and their knowledge with you. And I know that social media and like Facebook can be kind of not safe spaces sometimes, but I've found that a lot of these gardening groups is just full of very nice people who are eager to, you know, share their hobby with other folks.
Okay, well, I guess we will wrap up for today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Monica, for
You're welcome.
your lesson today. And we
After
will,
party at Cargo Largo.
and we will see you next Friday, same time, 3:00. And you can RSVP on the library calendar. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.